Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us this evening for May's MineWatch community meeting. Very excited about the program this evening. Oop, there we go. My name is Stephanie Wells, and I am a community member. I'm now going to pass it off to Greg Thrush from the Sierra Fund to walk us through the procedures for this evening's meeting. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. I'm glad to see this many people tonight, and I trust that you'll hear some good information this evening. This meeting, as Stephanie said, is hosted by the Community Environmental Advocates Foundation. CEA is a local community group that advocates for responsible land use and environmental protection policies and actions in Nevada County. And one of the projects that CEA works on is the proposed reopening of the Idaho-Maryland Mine, and that's what we're talking about this evening. Thanks for joining us. So tonight's meeting is the next in a series of presentations we've been doing for a few months now about the impacts and implications of opening an industrial mine in our community. And all of the previous presentations have been recorded and are available to watch on the MineWatch website. If somebody could put it in the chat, that would be wonderful. CE holds these meetings once a month, as I said, to present special speakers who address different topics. Tonight, we have Dr. Christine Newsom. Christine practiced as an internist in Nevada County for almost 4 decades. She took care of patients with cases of pulmonary and cardiac diseases, and tonight she's going to talk about some potential public health effects of reopening the Idaho-Maryland Mine. So tonight, we hope that the meeting does 3 things for everyone: provide some valuable information on the impacts of the mine to our community, that people will learn about the information and tools available to understand the mine proposal better, and to make our concerns heard by the people who will decide the outcome of this mine applications. And also just to allow people to ask questions of the speakers and of CEA members about the mine, and to facilitate a community discussion. So before we get started, let me quickly introduce all the panelists that are on tonight. We have Christine Hubbard. Christine is a volunteer with CEA, and she's also a neighbor, approximate neighbor to the Idaho-Maryland Mine. And everybody's met Stephanie. She introduced us. She's our communications manager tonight and technical wizard. Paul Schwartz is also a CEA volunteer and a person who is very thoughtful about, he's a retired capital planner and somebody who's thinks deeply about the issues of community development. We have Barbara Ravinas, who is also a CEA Foundation board member and general all about activist in town, and also a wonderful, insightful person in her own right. And lastly, we have Dr. Christine Newsom, who we are so excited to have this evening. And thank you so much for Christine for joining us tonight. So I guess let me just give you a quick overview of the order of things tonight. We're gonna let Paul start off, and he's just gonna talk a little bit with us and kind of update us on the public approval process, where things are at, what we can expect in the next few months. And then we'll let Christina do her presentation, followed by some questions that people have for Christine. Sorry, I said Christina, but Christine. And so during your presentation, if questions occur to you, please use the Q&A feature, and you'll see it at the icon at the bottom of your screen to ask questions. And we will be looking at them, fielding them, and we will present some of those to Christine as appropriate. And then Tracy, are you going to talk about what we can do this evening in just terms of active actions and stuff? Or is it going to be Christy? One of the two of them will be doing that.
Going to be me. I'm very excited.
Okay, you're going to do it. Okay, great. So Tracy will talk to us about it. And then we will open up for community discussion. So without further ado, let's get started. So I think the question and answer icon at the bottom of the screen is fairly self-explanatory. This is where you can input questions. Please note that when you open the box, it may appear right in the middle of your screen. You can just kind of drag it over to the side so you can see the presentation and also ask questions. And I'll talk about how to get recognized later on when we start the public meeting part. Okay, so without further ado, Paul, you want to take it away?
Sure. So I'm a CEA volunteer. My background and my education is in business management, business administration. I have an AA from Sierra College, a BS, and a master's degree from the California State University system. Spent 30 years in the public sector, primarily in operations and capital planning. Had 8 years on the Grass Valley Planning Commission, and I worked over the last 35 years on general plans for Grass Valley and steering committees, and also on general plans for Nevada County. Been a resident in Grass Valley since 1971, except for 10 years, 2002 to 2012, I took a job with UC Davis to help modernize the campus. So what I'm going to talk about is the public process we're involved in. The environmental impact report is in preparation. The county is currently looking at an administrative draft EIR, which is the first document that's been produced. The EIR is what's used to satisfy all of the requirements for CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, for projects that are of the magnitude of this project. The county has had the administrative draft EIR for a few weeks. We anticipate they'll have it for a few weeks or even more. There's a lot of issues with the quality and the project documents that are informing the EIR study. And there's over 100 technical reports, and they're being revised to satisfy both the Nevada County Planning and the consultants' requirements to get to higher quality, more thoroughness, and more accuracy. The process could last into the fall. We really don't know. It depends on how responsive the different consultants are to the county and consultants' requests. This is right now, the phase we're in is internal to Nevada County Planning. This public is not involved, and Rise Gold is not involved. Once the administrative draft EIR phase is complete, then the consultant will prepare a draft EIR. So it will be the document that is presented by the county to all of the state public agencies, the federal public agencies, and the public. And we will have an opportunity to review those reports and review the draft EIR and comment. Typically right now, there's a minimum of 45 days for us to comment. I think because June 15th, we're supposed to be able to go mask-free, that there will be public hearings we can all attend. You'll have an opportunity to go and speak in front of the Planning Commission and in front of the Board of Supervisors and tell them what you think about the environmental documents and the project. You can also put it in writing. I would suggest you do both. Send written documents and attend every public meeting you can to speak out about the mine. The DEIR phase will likely won't start until this fall. And there's no telling how long it could last, but it could go as late as into the winter of 2021-22. It's all speculation at this point. Depends on how fast reports are updated and how fast the county reviews them and is satisfied with the end product, and then how fast the consultant then could take all of that and turn out a complete document. The final EIR, the FEIR, comes last, and that's the final document that the Planning Commission will review and send a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors, and the Board of Supervisors will review and decide whether to accept and adopt the EIR in its final form. And from that, at that point, then they will have to make a decision on whether to approve the project moving forward or to reject it. They can adopt the EIR and still reject the project. If they were to accept the project and ask it and give it the authority to proceed, we would enter an entitlements phase. And that would include mitigation monitoring and reporting requirements, use permits, reclamation plans, rezone approval, variance approvals, and performance bond requirements. This could be done very quickly, or it could take months. And likely there'll be public hearings again to go in and express yourselves and to say what you think about it. In addition, but essential to the proposed Idaho-Maryland mine reopening project, is the Centennial cleanup project. The two projects are linked, but they are on separate approval processes. The the Centennial cleanup project is working its way through a process with the state agency Department of Toxic Substance Control. And the cleanup proposal that Rise Gold submitted is working its way through that system. And we really don't know when the Department of Toxic Substance Control will offer up things for the public to review, or what their next steps will be. It's the intention of the CEA to keep you informed of all the important dates and issues. You can go to the webpage, minewatchnc.org. You can look at the CEA newsletter, and these monthly webinars we'll be updating on the timing of all these approvals and what you can do to participate. With that, I'll return this to Greg, our moderator, and thank you for being here tonight.
Thanks, Paul, for the update. That was very informative. Before we get to hear from Christine, I'd like to just do a couple of quick polls. Just let's get to know each other a little bit. I'm going to launch a couple of very quick polls. If you could respond, it would be give us an idea of who we are and what our interests are, concerns. So the first one is, where do you live? We're just interested where people are coming from in terms of this poll. Go ahead and give us a quick indication. People are responding. We're almost done. That was super fast. We're at 75% already. 80%. Okay. So looks like you've sort of stopped. Let's give me just a couple seconds more to see if anybody else wants to respond before we show it. Okay, I'm ending the poll. So about 82% of us responded back. And Grass Valley, most of us are from Grass Valley, me too included. I live in downtown. And then Nevada City, Nevada County in general, and then the larger foothill community. Great. And am I sharing those results with everybody? Yeah, there we go. Okay, and so the next question I'm going to ask is, stop sharing that one. Just sort of top concerns. What are your top 3 concerns concerning the mine? And if you could just go through, these are the sort of some of the main topics that we've identified. If you could check in with us about what your concerns are. people are polling. It looks like water impact is the most prevalent concern, followed by community impacts, noise, vibration, traffic, etc., and then property values. And I'm going to end the poll now and show everybody. Yeah, so definitely the water impact to wells, creeks, aquifers is a major concern of all of us here tonight, followed up quite closely by the community impacts, and then also property values ranked there, and risk to our local economy is also significant. So good, thank you so much. And so now to our feature presenter this evening, Christine Newsom. Dr. Christine Newsom has been a longtime community member. Many people know her. She's quite a neat person, and she is going to talk to us tonight about the potential health effects, public health effects from starting a mine again. So Christine, take it away. The forum is yours.
Okay. Thanks, Greg. Appreciate that nice intro. Good evening, everyone. I've been asked to talk to you about the potential public health effects of reopening of the Idaho-Maryland Mine by the Rise Gold Company, which you probably know is headquartered in British Columbia, Canada. And while there are many potential effects and potential risks of reopening the mine, I plan to divide my comments into 4 general sections: air quality effects, water effects, noise effects, and psychosocial effects. Before we even get into those areas, though, I would like to review with you a map that encompasses the area of the mine's activities and how it relates to Grass Valley and Nevada County. Could I have that first map slide, Stephanie? Okay, I'm not sure my cursor, can you all see my cursor on that or not? No, okay, so you're just going to have to, okay. Stephanie, is that your cursor? Okay, so hopefully you can just follow my commands. Okay. You'll see here for broad outline, Highway 49 in the left part of the map. No, that's 174. 49 is a northeasterly, southwesterly transection. There we go, that's 49. In the pink violet, you'll see the city of Grass Valley. And you'll notice not only is it in its most obvious color against a white background, but it extends rightward on the map or eastward on the map against part of the gray background. And I'm going to explain that gray, but I just want you to understand that it overlaps both the white and the gray. In green, you'll see the Empire Mine State Park. There we go. Okay. Now, take a look at the gray, and superimposed on the dark gray, you'll see 2 patches of light gray. And incidentally, any one of you who has spent a long time dealing with the potential mine, you know all this, but I'm reviewing this for those of you who are just coming into the subject of the Idaho-Maryland Mine, and I myself had to review a lot of this when I started out. Okay, the light gray areas are the 2 above ground areas that are now owned by the Rise Gold Company. And they are up at the top here. You see, leave your cursor there, okay, on the Centennial industrial site. There's the one. And incidentally, this Centennial site has nothing to do with the Centennial Dam. And again, I'm mentioning that only for your clarification, because when I was new to this subject, I was confused about that. Centennial Mine has nothing to do with the Centennial Dam. Okay, let's go down to the other light gray site, and you'll see that's the Brunswick industrial site. Now in the dark gray, and Stephanie, can you just sort of outline the exterior margins of the dark gray? That is the outline of the mineral site that is owned by the Rise Gold Company. That means they own the rights to 200 feet below ground on down below that. They have the right to dig, burrow, explode, or do anything they want to all of that territory, starting at 200 feet going on down. As you can see, part of the city of Grass Valley overlies the northern part of those mineral rights. The intention of the company is to enter at the Brunswick industrial site, that lower light gray area, enter their underground operations and do their exploration, their burrowing, their all of whatever they're going to do underground, enter from that site, bring up all their underground ore and process it above ground there at the industrial site with all of their stamping, crushing, processing, then load up that processed ore into 20-ton diesel trucks and drive it down Brunswick Road north and then turning left or west onto Whispering Pines. Good, where that you follow that arrow, and then dumping it off at the Centennial industrial site. This will entail up to 100 round trips of these 20 to 40 ton diesel trucks per day, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. So that's the orientation that we're talking about. Well, let's get started on the direct effects of the mine. Can we have the next slide? You all have heard an excellent talk, those who have been tuning into these seminars, you've had an excellent talk by Pam Hurd, who is a respiratory therapist, in March, I believe. And I want to thank Pam for the detailed information that she analyzed and delivered. And I am repeating a lot of her material. She made a good point that in analyzing any health risk, it's essential to know what the baseline risk is. And for those of you who are not aware, Nevada County's baseline air quality gets an F grade from the American Lung Association in its State of the Air annual report. And let's look at some of the numbers specifically. What you see on this slide is data taken from a 2019 community health needs assessment that was commissioned by Sierra Nevada Memorial Hospital and the County of Nevada. And I've extracted here just some of the respiratory disease data. As you can see, Nevada County has almost double the annual mortality rate from chronic lung disease at 69 cases per 100,000 people, compared to 35 per 100,000 for the state of California. The asthma prevalence for our whole county is about 12%. And for the state of California, it's 8.7. Mortality rate for heart disease is 224 per 100,000 people annually versus 157 for the state of California. These numbers are a result of many complex factors, like some are behavioral, like cigarette smoking, but many of them are environmental, like ozone and other greenhouse gases, particulate matter like smoke from our wildfires, and some occupational pollutants. And you might say, well, how can this be since we have so little heavy industry in our beautiful foothills? Well, we do know that weather and wind patterns often funnel pollutants into our county, and especially the Brunswick Basin, from the Central Valley, to the extent that sometimes we've been described as, or our area has been described as the tailpipe of the Central Valley. Into this already toxic air is being proposed an industrial operation, the Rise Gold Mine, which will be introducing a host of additional air pollutants. First of all, there will be all of the machinery at both that Centennial site and the Brunswick site, and all those trucks traveling in between the two sites every day, virtually all of which will run on diesel fuel. Now, as this slide shows here, diesel exhaust contains many greenhouse gases, some of which are toxic in their own right, and some of which form ozone. All of these can cause asthma, wheezing, coughing, and shortness of breath. I want to mention in regard to ozone, again, for some of those of you who might be new to this whole area, ozone can be confusing because we do want more ozone high in our atmosphere because it protects us from ultraviolet light. We don't want it anywhere near our bodies because it is very irritative to the lining of our airways, where again, it can cause terrible wheezing, shortness of breath, and chronic lung disease. Diesel fuel also contains particulate matter, which is abbreviated PM, which causes the same list of problems. And particulate matter can be, well, it's usually thought of as anything less than 100 microns, but in diesel, the really nasty stuff is from 5 to 1 microns. And the parts in diesel that we're concerned especially about causing cancer are less than 1 micron. The California Air Resources Board estimates that about 70% of cancer risk from breathing toxic air contamination, 70%, comes from diesel exhaust particles. Additionally, there's a piece of information that is literally hot off the press. It just came out this week in the journal, American Journal of Respiratory and Critical Care Medicine. And that is that women who were highly exposed to ultrafine particles in air pollution during their pregnancy were more likely to have children who developed asthma. And this is the first time that asthma has been linked with prenatal exposure to this type of air pollution. So that's pretty sobering. In addition to the pollution from diesel vehicles that we're worried about from the mine, we're concerned about fugitive dust, or dust from the mining process, which includes the crushing and processing of the ore and transporting and spreading of the ore at the Centennial site. This blasting and crushing and spreading results in emissions of dust filled with trace levels of heavy metals, and that's according to the mine's own air quality report. But in addition, there are 2 particles of particular concern to me. The first is silica fibers, which can result in silicosis. That's a type of pulmonary fibrosis caused by breathing in tiny bits of silica. And this occurs over a period of years. But again, exposure to silica can cause wheezing, asthma type symptoms, coughing, shortness of breath, and ultimately irreversible scarring of the lungs. And of great concern is the risk of asbestosis as a result of asbestos fibers, which are found in certain types of asbestos ore, such as serpentine and serpentinite. Asbestosis is a chronic or long-term lung disease, which really is a collection of different types of lung diseases. But they involve scarring of the lungs, lung cancer, a special kind of lung cancer called mesothelioma. Actually, it's cancer of the lining of the lungs and the lining of other organs in the body. The Rise Gold Company took ore samples over the last few years and has had them analyzed. These samples indicate that there will be both silica and asbestos fibers being released by the mining, drilling, ore crushing, and refining activities. Although it's assumed that the mining company would be using adequate protective gear to protect their employees from exposure to this dust, there does not yet exist any specific asbestos risk management plan that can reassure us that the public will not be exposed. Next slide, please. The mine has written that it will put certain mitigations in place, including Tier 4 diesel engines. Those are engines that regulate the amount of particulate matter and nitrogen oxides that can be emitted. Filters on the mine ventilation fans, keeping the mine dust wetted down, rinsing truck tires before leaving work sites, and tarps, putting tarps to cover the extracted materials. But it's up to the Air Quality Resource Board to do the monitoring for compliance, and they are severely understaffed, so the public would be at the mercy of the mine operators for the most part. If the mitigation measures are insufficient to control an unacceptable problem, there's no clear plan of action. Sadly, most of the health consequences of exposure to both diesel exhaust and fugitive dust can take a long time to develop, so it could be years before the alarm might be sounded. My conclusion is that there is a substantial risk of increasing air pollution with ozone, other greenhouse gases, particulate matter, fugitive dust, and possibly cancer-causing asbestos from the mine, that we cannot accept this liability in our community.
Can I interject something? I've noticed a couple people have raised their hands. I just want to tell those people that if they want to say something or make a comment, to please put it into the Q&A, and we will kind of direct it to you as appropriate. So instead of raising your hand, folks, at this point, please put your question or comment into the Q&A. Go ahead, Christine, just wanted to let.
Sorry, I'm unable to see any raised hands.
That's fine, yeah.
Let's look at the effects on water. The mine owners have stated that they plan to pump out 3.6 million gallons per day of water from the mine for the first 6 months, and then 1.2 million gallons per day for the next 80 years of operation. That's a staggering amount of water, and the effect could be far-reaching. There are at least 300 private residential wells that lie above the mineral rights of the mine or nearby. And as the water tables get drained, some of these wells may well go dry. They probably will go dry. That's not just a theoretical risk. When the Siscon mine was in operation on the San Juan Ridge in the 1990s, 12 households lost their wells before the mine was shut down. Furthermore, the hydrology of this dewatering process is such that contaminants remaining in the aquifer may be co-mixed with residential water, resulting in property owners finding their water poisoned. Another consideration regarding water quality. The mine owner's claim is that the water's quite clean. Actually, the mine water currently has iron levels that are over 5 times the maximum contaminant level, or MCL, manganese levels over 4 times the MCL, and arsenic levels over 3 times the MCL. This water needs to be treated before being pumped into Wolf Creek, which runs through Grass Valley, and from there into the Bear River, then the Feather River, then the Sacramento, and then the San Francisco Bay. The Rise Company claims that after it is treated, it will be equal in purity to drinking water. But what does that mean? According to the mine application documents on file with Nevada County, mine water discharge would be treated to remove manganese, iron, and arsenic, bringing the quality up to what is referred to as secondary drinking water standards. Treatment to secondary standards generally only removes certain water quality contaminants identified on a list of about 15 items. This meets standards for discharging into a creek, but it is not drinking water quality. To bring the water up to primary drinking water standards, bacteria and dozens of additional contaminants need to be removed. This level of treatment of the effluent would not be achieved, and the effluent would not be something that any of us would want in the drinking water of our family or our communities. And even if the water were acceptably clean, it's hard to predict what the effect on the local habitat, flora and fauna, and agriculture would be with the addition of such huge volumes of water to the watershed. So for qualitative and quantitative considerations, the reopening of the mine will have huge consequences. Let's turn now to the effect of the mine on noise levels. Could I have the next slide, please? Okay, this slide gives you an idea of the levels of noise that we are commonly exposed to in our daily lives, measured in decibels. You can see that normal conversation usually comes in at about 60 decibels. That's in the sort of light green area. And other common household noises are usually somewhere between the 50 to 70 range. When things come in around 80 decibels, we perceive them as noisy. Look at school children in a noisy cafeteria there. OSHA actually recommends that we not be exposed to levels above 85 decibels for a continued period of time without ear protection. And you can see why by the next graph. Could we look at that? Okay. And I'll let you take a while to digest all this data. Measurable damage to the ear's hearing apparatus starts happening with continuous exposure to noise above the levels listed here. Okay, so we really have to be careful once we start getting above 80, the high 80s in decibels for any continuous period of time. Now let's look at the next slide to see what noise will be generated at the industrial sites of the proposed mines, proposed mine between both the Centennial site and the Brunswick site. This is data taken from the University of Michigan. And as you can see, we're talking about compactors, excavators, front-end loaders, graders, loaders, pile drivers, roller compactors, earth scrapers. All of those would be used at both sites, really. And then, of course, the trucks, and that's just the 20-ton truck. Now, these are levels of noise, of course, that would be experienced right by someone standing right at the site. The public isn't going to be right at the site. So these levels of noise degrade with distance. But remember that it will be necessary for many neighbors to drive by these sites frequently, maybe hundreds of times over a period of years on the way to school or work. And it's difficult to know or measure to what extent the noise will degrade with distance. Will a 100 decibel noise degraded by distance to 85 decibels do the same damage over 8 hours that it would in 15 minutes if you were standing next to it? That's a hard thing to know, or it's impossible to measure really right now. And don't forget the damaging effect of noise on the ear isn't limited to just hearing loss. These damaging effects also include tinnitus or ringing of the ear, vertigo, and depression. Because the onset of these symptoms can sometimes be very subtle, there may be a long delay between noise exposure from the mine and realization of the causal relationship to these symptoms. And while we're considering noise hazards, we must also address subterranean noise and vibration from underground explosives, which will be used extensively in the mine or under the mine. Rise Gold has submitted data indicating that the explosives would be occurring deep enough that the vibrations would not be felt or heard above ground. But these are theoretical studies with no guaranteed outcome. Again, we're being asked to trust Rise Gold's word. I'd like to return to that map for a moment and bring your attention over here on the western edge. Stephanie, maybe you could outline where you see that Scotty dog silhouette. I can't point, but can you use your imagination way over on the west or left-hand side, over on the left? Can you see the little Scotty dog? Look on the gray, dark gray. You're near it. Look to the left of the Centennial. There you go. You see the gray? There, you're at it. See the Scotty dog? Okay, look at the ear of the Scotty dog. There, right there where the ear is. That's Sierra Nevada Memorial Hospital. Okay. As well, bear that in mind. Additionally, I thought I was going to have the cursor for this part, but since I don't, I hope you all can follow along with me here. Try to imagine the sort of rhomboid outlined by Idaho-Maryland Road, which is down here. Let's see, how can I say this? Yeah, underneath the Scotty dog's neck. Good, and go about halfway down Idaho-Maryland Road. Halfway down, stop, no, come back. Then you hit Sutton Road. Go due north on Sutton Road, halfway towards Brunswick with your cursor. Go, stop, and come back to Highway 49. There you go, and back down again. Okay, that quadrant, let's call it a quadrant, over to 49. Within that quadrant, you have 4 skilled nursing facilities. You've got Atria, excuse me, you've got Crystal Ridge, Atria, Spring Hill Manor, and Golden Empire. So imagine if Rise Gold found a particularly valuable vein of ore that they decided to start blasting in that quadrant. And that lasted for months or years. And couple that with all the noise produced at the Centennial site, which is that upper left, that light gray area. Can you imagine the noise and vibration generated and conducted to the patients in that acute care facility and the long-term chronic care facilities in that proximity? What if you had a loved one in one of those facilities, or if you yourself were in one of those facilities? I just ask you to contemplate how that would make you feel. And that's a good segue into the final area I wanted to discuss, which is the psychosocial effects. Once again, we should look at what our baseline statistics are. We are a vulnerable population. That 2019 community assessment showed that the prevalence of depression in our county is unfortunately quite high at 26.8% relative to the state of California, where it's already at a very high level of 19.2%. And even more sad is a heartbreaking number here. The number of completed suicides, the mortality of suicides per year, that year was 20.22 per 100,000 people. That's double that of the state of California, which was 10.78 per 100,000. And there's a very low availability of caregivers to treat this level of depression. We psychiatrists are certainly not the only providers, but their number is just a measurement of how poorly provided for we are. We have 9.13 psychiatrists per 100,000 in contrast to the rest of California at 13.42. And interestingly, a survey was taken in that same community needs assessment. People were asked, out of 10 possible healthcare services, what do you think the ranking is of these 10 services? And access, excuse me, access to mental, behavioral, and substance abuse services was ranked as the #1 need of all the healthcare needs. So that's where we were in 2019. Statistics would indicate our mental health status is even worse since the pandemic. That is, anxiety and depression in Nevada County is even worse since 2019. We are a vulnerable community, and to that, we are bringing in, or we are being asked to bring in an industrial project that has no indication of bettering the mental health status for the vast majority of people in our county. As a matter of fact, could we have the next slide? I would venture to propose that the potential psychosocial risks include increased anxiety over property values, increased anxiety over dewatering of wells, increased frustration and depression over noise, increased frustration and depression over worsening of the respiratory status of oneself and loved ones, decreased pride and cohesiveness in our community, and frustration that little to no economic return will come to our community. In conclusion, I would like to say that the population of Western Nevada County at risk for one or more negative health effects of the reopening of the mine could be in the tens of thousands. That stands in contrast to the 312 people who are expected to reap the benefit of gaining a job at the mine. And half of that number might even have to come from outside of the county because of the level of specialty that is required of the job. Considering all that I've discussed tonight, I think that the benefit to risk ratio is not close to being justified. The final slide I want to show you is from the California Health and Safety Code. Can we have that last slide? It states plainly what is already law. Oh, I'm sorry, it's the last of my slides. Do we have one more? There we go, that's it. Section 41-700 of the California Health and Safety Code states that a person must not discharge from any source whatsoever quantities of air contaminants or other material that cause injury, detriment, nuisance, or annoyance to any considerable number of persons or to the public, or that endanger the comfort, repose, health, or safety of any of those persons or the public, or that cause or have a natural tendency to cause injury or damage to business or property. Section 41-700 also applies to sources of objectionable odors. The reopening of the Idaho-Maryland mine risks defying this health code on multiple levels and should be resisted by all concerned citizens of Nevada County. Well, thanks for your time, and let's go on then.
Thank you very much, Christine. That was a really good presentation. And we have a few questions that have been put in. Some of them have been answered by our volunteers. I think some of the questions that came up were really good and weren't specifically related to Christine's presentation, and we might want to kind of revisit some of those again when we get to the second part of our Q&A. But I want to address the ones, a couple that are specific to Christine's presentation. And Christine, if you might be able to field some of these. In the first slide that you showed, the 2019 Community Health Needs Assessment, a person asks, are the numbers, like for example, the 69 out of 100,000, are these normalized for age distribution in Nevada County? Do you know?
That was taking on all age groups.
Hmm.
So if they had been looked at per decade, you definitely would have seen a lower number in lower decades of age, higher in higher. I'm not sure if that is what the person is asking.
Mm-hmm.
But nevertheless, it indicates that the same thing would hold true in any other part of the state of California.
Okay. And there's another question related to Nevada County's unique air impacts. And the question is whether they are unique in terms of different from the Central Valley, and whether other foothill counties up and down the Central Valley are similarly affected by pollution that's being blown in from lower elevations. Specifically, where is Nevada County on the air pollution spectrum when considering all the counties to the east of the Central Valley? Do you know anything about that?
I am not the authority to ask.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot give you an accurate answer on that. I can tell you that I was observing on a daily basis the air contamination with ozone, nitrous oxide, and particulate matter during our wildfire season, as probably many of you were doing. And for, I'd say, much of the northeast part of the state. And Placer and Nevada County were some of the worst polluted, other than the counties like Plumas that were actually having the wildfire itself. But I sure cannot tell you over a non-wildfire period of time what the answer to that is.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I have also read some things that while all the Sierra foothills are impacted by the pollution coming out of the Central Valley, it is a common problem to all foothill communities, that the actual physical geography of areas also determines how much air gets trapped, and that Grass Valley in our area is actually kind of unique, or it has particular issues related. And I've seen similar statistics that Nevada County and Placer County are actually have worse air quality standards than Sacramento County. If anybody would like to ask other questions of Dr. Newsom, please put them into the question and answer. And I have a couple of questions that I'd like to ask, if that's okay, Christine. You've talked about how Nevada County has above average health risks indices compared to other areas around the state. So Mike, I'm just wondering, it's like, yes, we do have this. So why are communities with health disparities like ours, such as ours, more impacted by projects or like this proposed gold mine?
The simple answer is that risk factors for most illnesses or conditions of the human body are additive. So for example, if anybody here has ever had a discussion with his or her doctor in regard to heart, let's say heart disease, I'll bet your doctor has talked about the additive effects of a high cholesterol and elevated blood pressure and smoking. And if you have, and there's, a couple other additional risk factors. And if you have just one of those risk factors, it's not quite as important. If you have two, it's more of concern. Three, it's of great concern, etc. And there's the majority of maladies of the human body are affected in the same way. And so I think your question, if I understood it correctly, was why, if we're already suffering from a given disorder, is it worse for us if something like the mine comes in? It's because we're already vulnerable. It's more likely to tip us over. If we had the healthiest of lungs, then all that particulate matter may not make that much difference. If we don't, it could be the metaphoric straw that breaks the camel's back. Additive risk factors.
I was looking at the map, and you were sort of pointing to an area that's very close to Sierra Nevada Memorial Hospital, and it looked like, I'm not exactly certain, but it looks like this hospital may sit atop of the mineral rights area that Rise Gold owns. I'm curious, you're a doctor, you probably have spent some time there. Is there like highly sensitive equipment that might be impacted by like underground explosions? I don't know. It was just kind of a random question that occurred to me while you were talking. Is that something that would it impact our hospital's ability to do their work? And I guess any other sort of sensitive equipment industries that might be located under the airport or other areas where light industry is using equipment.
Well, there's no question that there are laboratory equipment and therapeutic equipment that would be affected by vibrations. The real question is, would vibrations reach the surface? And the one consultant's report that I read, furnished by Rise Gold, claimed that no matter how deep or no matter how strong the explosions underground were, they would never be of the strength and they would never be superficial enough nor strong enough that they would be radiated to the surface. So neither a homeowner or an industry would be able to detect them by any equipment. That's their claim. Not only do we not have any way of knowing that, but what concerns me is that if that were not the case, it would be too late once they were completely built.
Okay, so really, it's an open question. So I'm curious, Christine, during your years of practice here in Nevada County, what kinds of things did you see that made you kind of come to your conclusions that mining again here wouldn't be beneficial for this community's health and well-being? Like, what were some of the things that you saw when you were practicing?
Well, I have to be honest with you. When I started here in 1981, there weren't many of the hard rock miners left. Let me rephrase that. There weren't many of the miners who had been subjected to the old-fashioned hard rock mining without protection. I honestly can't remember any patient that I had. So I wasn't left feeling, doggone it, we can't ever let those mines open again. I wasn't left a mine activist. But I surely, during my training, residency, et cetera, saw lots of industrial pulmonary disease, and even had a professor who trained back at University of Pennsylvania who had seen lots of mine-related pulmonary disease. And the poor miners, they look sort of like someone with end-stage emphysema who is constantly drowning. Now, miners aren't going to get to that point these days. There's way more OSHA protection and so forth in place. But I'm sorry, I'm trying to get back to your question. What motivated me to think that mines shouldn't be, or this kind of industry should not come back? Was that sort of?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll be honest, I'm more motivated. I'm as much motivated now because of the environmental concerns as by the public health concerns. It's so hard to separate them.
Yeah, thank you. So it's about 7 o'clock, and what I'd like to do now is thank you, Christine, very much. I don't see any other questions that are specifically related to your presentation. We do have a lot of questions, just general questions about the mine and the process, et cetera. And so what I'd like to do is, first off, have Tracy give a brief presentation about what we can do, and in terms of taking actions to let our opinions be known about what we think about the mine. And then I will open it up to general question and answer after that. And the way that's going to work is that we will acknowledge people's raised hands. And so if everyone can look at the bottom of your toolbar, you'll see a little raised hand icon. And if you push that, we'll see it, and we will just acknowledge you verbally and unmute and let you unmute yourself, and you can, you've got the floor. So just know that that's coming. And so before we do that, Tracy, would you like to talk a little bit about things in terms of organizing and taking action and all that stuff?
Sure, I would love to do that. So the way I'd like to start this off is actually to take a quick poll. If somebody could push that poll out for me, sure. I'd love to get a sense of how people have been involved so far. And once we understand that, we can talk a little bit more. So how have you been involved? What actions have you taken on this issue? So you see the poll before you. Have you signed a petition? Start filling it out now. Do you follow this on social media? Have you come to other webinars? Check all that apply. Have you written letters, a lawn sign? Oh, I need to find out how I can help. Great, because that's what I'm going to do right now. Let's get a sense of how many people need to know that. And I'm here to learn more about the issues. So let's go give it a few more seconds, and we're going to get a sense of what we know, what we've done. All right, are the numbers still moving? There are people who are technically
responding. Yeah, doing this. Let's give it a few more seconds.
We'll get a few more seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And while that's moving up, wow, I just have to say, first off, keep filling that in and listen as you do it. Right now, as you heard from Paul's presentation, we're waiting for the DEIR to come out, and that's the public's next chance to comment on this. The bottom line here is that it's the County Board of Supervisors that make the final call on it. So of course, we need you to make sure you're getting the word to the county supervisors. But right now, this period's critical for us because before the DEIR comes out, we need to build our ranks. We need to make this issue visible in the community, especially before the Board of Supervisors. One of the best ways to build our ranks is to get people to sign the petition. That's going to build our numbers and more people that can be involved. So now let's take a look at the poll. About a quarter of everyone here has signed the petition. When you hang up tonight, folks, I'm going to ask you, go sign that petition. You're following us on social media. Great. We have a private Facebook page for members only. You can sign up for that. And if you sign up for a public page and you're in Facebook, then you'll be able to share information from that. Attending the MineWatch webinars. There are folks here that had said they weren't sure. I think there was only one person, but if you're not sure about where you're at, that's fine. Come to the monthly webinars. And then writing letters to the supervisors. That one is huge. So the Board of Supervisors meets twice a month on Tuesdays, the second and fourth Tuesday. It's critical that we have visibility at the supervisors meeting. So send in your letters, definitely to your supervisor or to all supervisors, attend those meetings and put a face on this issue, not just a letter, but go tell your personal story about the mine to the supervisors. They want to hear this. So right now, between now and the DEIR, our job is to get this issue visible, send out petitions, and send out information through social media to your friends. That's the number one thing. Help build our ranks. And if you need more information, go to our website. We have a whole checklist on what to do. If we can shut down the poll.
Sure, and I want to just make a comment. I saw the comment about the fact that we could only, you could only choose one of the polls. Sorry about that. We didn't set up the poll properly. So we will, I'm not going to try it. I don't think we want to try it again, but just wanted to let you know that was our, we could relaunch it. What do you guys think? Should we, or should we just go onward?
I don't know. Stephanie's the expert to know if we could relaunch it.
We can. I just don't know if we want to take the time. I just thank you for bringing that up. Sorry about that.
I think it's fine to relaunch if people are okay.
Yeah,
but
does everybody want to do that? Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, because we really,
Tracy,
really
I
helped us
volunteer.
to know. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind. So sorry about that. Let's try it one more time. I'm going to relaunch the survey. If everybody could try again, and it'll give us a clear indication of you know, what actually has
Sorry, Greg?
Yes.
Greg, this is Christy. I'm just going to hop in here. You're going to need to give me a few minutes in order to reset it.
Oh,
so
okay.
I'll just add I will add a new poll, but why don't we take some Q&A and then we could come back to it.
So I'm going to end this poll because it sounds like it hasn't been fixed yet. Is that
I have one more comment that I was going to wrap up. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna end this poll. Sorry, folks. A little bit of a glitch here. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this.
One thing I really want to note to folks under the take action is join a group. We've formed work groups now that are focusing on getting out and getting petitions signed and setting up tables in the community. We'd love to have you join us to do that. We're also reaching out to local businesses and having meetings to hear what their concerns are about this mine. And of course, we have a social media group and a signs group. So if you're interested in joining, just go to our website and fill out the information, send it in. All right. So now I will follow your direction, Greg, on what I should do next.
I'm not sure. I think Christy is fixing the poll. Did you finish everything you wanted to share with people?
I did.
Okay.
I did. Going back to mute.
Yeah. Do you want me to talk a little bit about support of the project, or do you want to do that one?
Sure, I can actually do that. Okay, as you can imagine, oh, sorry. The bottom thing under support is donate. As you can imagine, a campaign like this takes resources. Resources to run this, resources also to support whatever legal challenge might happen. CEA has hired a wonderful attorney, probably the best in CEQA and the mining issue, Shoot Mahali and Weinberger. So it's critical that they have this financial, or we have the financial support to do this. That financial support is going to make sure we can win. So just go to the MineWatch website, www.minewatchnc.org, and click on donate. And we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. So great. Thanks very much, Tracy. And so now what we'd like to do, it's about 10 after 7. Let's open things. Yes.
I think we have a version 2 of that poll available now. You want to do that now?
What's everybody think?
It is your choice.
I think let's just move on let's start the question and answer. Okay. So yes, so now I do see some people's hands up. If you would like to make a comment or ask a question to any of the panel about things beyond what Christine talked about with us tonight, now is your opportunity. And I'll start by, I think Schiffner's had her hand up the longest. So go ahead, Jill. I think if you unmute yourself, you are open to talk. Jill, are you there? Okay, looks like maybe she is not there. So let's go on to the next person. Josie, I see that you've put your hand up. Go ahead. I believe you're, you are available to talk. Josie, are you there? I'm not sure why this isn't working, but I can see that Josie put a question up, and maybe she's just wants it to be answered. Josie asks, it's actually a comment, that environmental impacts is the topic of the next meeting that that CEA is going to hold, the next public meeting. And that will be on June 27th. And it will the presentation will be by the Wolf Creek Community Alliance, the red chapter of the California Natural Plant Society or Native Plant Society, and CEA. So you're obviously all invited to that. That should be a very interesting presentation as well. And so Jill, are you still on the line, and do you have something you would like to say? I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna take your hand down, and it looks like you maybe have already done so, and move on to the next person. So Carolyn, did you want to make a comment or ask a question? Carolyn, are you there? This is very curious. I'm not sure where everybody is, but I will assume that they're not on the line at the moment, and we'll go onward. I was just kind of looking at some of the other questions that people had posed, and Paul and others had answered, kind of directly to people. I'm just sort of scouting through them, and one question is, does the Cali EPA have any jurisdiction to stop the project? The fact that the impacts of this mine will go down, reach areas further beyond. And Paul, you responded directly to the person. Do you want to kind of say what you said to this person about what Cal EPA's jurisdiction is?
Sure. So I don't know it specifically, but I would expect they would be treated as any other public agency, state or federal, and they would comment on the project, and their comments would carry a lot of weight. And I would expect the consultants and the county planning to respond to their comments in the reports, in the final EIR. I think the EPA has the authority, if there are gross violations, stop a project from, but it would be stop the operation of the project. So, but as far as approving the project or implementing it, stopping that, I don't believe they have that role. They just would have a role to work with the county to improve. But I see Barbara's got her hand up. I'll defer to Barbara.
I actually wasn't going to answer that. I agree with your what you said regarding that. However, people are not being able to unmute themselves. Is there something that we have been doing in the background that has many of them muted, and that's why they can't?
I'm not sure. I don't think so. But
We
if
have a-
Carolyn or Jill, if you do want to make a comment, ask a question, go ahead and raise your hand again, and I'll try you again. But it may be that they got their question answered already or no longer wish to.
Well, I have several comments, several questions that came through the question and answer.
Yeah.
Frustration about not being able to
Yeah.
get through.
Oh my. Okay.
Audio.
Okay.
And Greg and Barbara, I'm going to pop in. I am looking at a panel where I see that Caroline, Jill, and Josie are muted and others are not. So I'd love it if we could call on somebody else who's raised their hand and at least give it a try.
Okay. I don't see anybody else with their hand raised at the moment, so we're open.
Can I add something? You know, a lot of the response when it happens after the problem has occurred. So we can all go along and we can say, you know, if Rise Gold does everything correctly, then shoot, why not approve the project? The problem is that on these kinds of big operations that have the possibility of doing immense damage for a long time before it's figured out, before the EPA understands that the dumping is occurring, or before the county understands that they've exceeded the standards for the chemicals and the discharges they're dumping into Wolf Creek, or before we understand that all the dusts and particulates have risen to a massive level, that a lot of damage can be done. And that's the risk of a project like this. And there's a long history of that being the case. So it's hard to put the cork back in the bottle. And we've seen no evidence that they have plans that if things go sideways, what will they do? So if the EPA had to start using their authority, then that would mean there's already been a problem.
Good, yeah. Christy, somebody asked a question which you answered. Has a city or county rezoned the mine property for industrial use? If not, could they stop the mine by not rezoning?
Well, that is certainly one of, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, would you mind kind of telling everybody what you had responded back to a question?
Sure, yeah. So the Brunswick site is the one that's in particular of interest to most folks. It is currently zoned light industrial, which means, you know, they could put in some small businesses and a little business park and those kinds of things. But in order to be approved for the mine to reopen, one of the things that they have to get a permission is as a mining extraction extension, if you will, to that light industrial. And so that is one of the things that is, absolutely a high question, because it changes the very nature of what is allowed on that property. And certainly for all the property owners nearby who thought that the worst that they would ever have is a light industrial little business park next to them, it really is a big issue. So yes, it is one of the things that they would have to be, one of the many permits and changes that they would have to get in order to be approved for this effort.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. I'm just looking over the questions here. There's one that coming from Jamie. He says, "What is the value to the community for the mine to operate?" And in others, would the Board of Supervisors approve the project? Is that how this works? And do they, if, like, say, the board of the planning departments approve the permit, does that mean that the Board of Supervisors has to approve the mine?
Let me take a little bit. That's a bunch of questions, but let me take a swing at that, and others feel free to swing in. Actually, Paul did say earlier, the environmental impact report can be approved without, but that does not necessarily mean that the Board of Supervisors will approve the entire project, right? All that means is that the EIR is done, and then the Board of Supervisors still has to make a decision, and the EIR is, after all, showing all of the, its goal is to demonstrate all of the concerns and really look into them. So hopefully that will be enlightening. Yeah, I was trying. Shame on me. Now I've forgotten the other question. Oh, the other question is, what's the value, right? What's the value of Rise coming in here? I mean, it's money, honey, right? Everybody wants money. Not only does Rise Gold want to get rich themselves and for all of their investors, because they will certainly be, benefiting from all the gold that they're extracting. But actually, we don't get the money from the gold. What we would get in their proposal is jobs and construction, and the benefit of having 300 people better employed, and the money that they would spend in the area. But here's my thinking on this. We're a small town. Every small town needs jobs, and we're no exception there. Of course, we need jobs, but any company that could come into this valley could bring jobs without this toxic load. So yes, I mean, we all know that it would be lovely to have jobs, but it's only 312 jobs, and at the same time, we don't know how many of those jobs would actually be the people in our community, and how many of them would be imports. That is still a big unknown. And again, at the end of the day, well, you've got 312 jobs, you've got 300 well owners at risk. They say that they're going to bring in $50 million in overall value, but we've seen reports that make us believe that property values across all of these many homes that would be impacted would be easily that much. So it really is a question of, the benefit versus the risk. And are we going to be like, yeah, everybody wants money, but at what cost? And my personal point of view on that is simply that I would rather have almost any other business in here that doesn't have this kind of risk.
Yeah, and I know that Community Environmental Advocates Foundation is very interested in the economic impacts, and towards that end, they are reaching out to local businesses, because I volunteer for CEA as well, are very interested in what they think and how they think about it. And so I want to put out to people that are on the meeting tonight, if you are a small business person, or somebody that we would benefit from talking to, please send us an email and say, hey, I know somebody who runs a dentist office, or who has a small business in town that has an interest in this, and we would love to talk to them. So just want to put that out. Paul?
Yeah, when you go around town, go around Grass Valley, Nevada City, Brunswick, every store has a help wanted sign in it. Mm-hmm. Every single store. And I don't believe that there's going to be 60 new jobs. I think what Rise Gold will do with the payroll they're talking about, they'll cherry pick the best employees they can find, and they'll take them away from existing jobs. So they'll be competing with the builders and consumers, with all the building contractors, with the county, with the city of Grass Valley, Nevada City, and they will be trying to recruit employees that they know have a track record, of reliability. And then it will be up to all those businesses in the county and the cities and the rest of them to then replace those people. So I really am suspicious of, in this climate, economic climate, that they're going to actually add anything economically to the community.
Okay. Thanks, Paul, for that. So we're at 7:26, and I think we want to wrap up. And so before we go, I'd like to do one or two final little polls just to get a sense of how this evening went for everybody. And and then after I do that, after we take these polls very quickly, I will wrap up and wish us all a good evening. So here we go. The first poll that I want to share is just a closing poll. How do we do? Okay, good, thanks. And then the second one is, just kind of want to get people's sense of after this discussion, what's your personal take on this, on the mine issue? We have our opinions, but we would love to know how people are feeling about it at this point. Sorry, I'm going to launch the poll here. Okay, good. So about 78% responded. Overwhelmingly, people on this call, unsurprisingly, are not interested in reopening it, but it's not, there was one person that was interested. So I really appreciate everybody coming, those who are for and against it, and I hope that this evening was informative, and we hope to see you again in June, on June 27th. We will be presenting about the environmental impacts, and it will be another interesting talk. And so good night, everybody, and thank you again, and wish you all well.
Thank you, Dr. Newsom.
Yes, Dr. Newsom, thank
Bye.
you so much for coming.